You're listening to the Waypoint TV Podcast Network, brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors.
Boat Trader, America's largest boating marketplace, offering easy financing and over 100,000 boat listings to choose from. Sell, find, and finance new or used boats on America's largest boating marketplace. Visit BoatTrader.com to get started.
Midway USA brand product designers have one straightforward goal: develop high-quality, technically sound products and deliver them to customers at reasonable prices. If you are immersed in the shooting sports industry and pay close attention to every single detail, you know our products are built right and stand up to everyday use. Who has shooting mats and range bag systems to hunting clothing and just about everything for the outdoors? Log on and shop 24/7 with super fast shipping. MidwayUSA.com.
All right, so we're sitting here and we're talking to Trevor and Jake Anderson, and believe it or not, no relation, just the same last name and the same company, and it is Toulou Broadheads. Did I say that right?
You nailed it.
Okay, so with that being said, can you guys introduce yourself for everybody listening and let them get to know you a little bit?
Sure.
You want me to kick it off? All right. So I'm Jake Anderson. I'm half of Toulou Broadhead Company. We're 50-50 owners. I guess what's the best way to introduce yourself as a hunting company owner, right? Broadhead company owner. We invented this thing together, and I grew up doing just a little bit of hunting, mostly birds and stuff like that with a shotgun, and this guy is the one who's really who got me into bow hunting. So this has been a real fun journey to do this together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm Trevor Anderson. Like I said, no relation, but good buddies with Jake here. And yeah, I've been hunting, since I was 8-9 years old. My dad and my grandpa would drag me out in the woods, and just a lot of awesome, wonderful memories with them, mostly all rifle hunting or shotguns and stuff when I was little. And then got into archery. Probably my first bow I bought back in like 2007 probably, and really got into it when I moved down to the south where there's not nearly as much rifle hunting, and really dove into it deep in probably 2017 to now. And yeah.
I got a question for you then on that one. Why is there not so much rifle hunting?
In the South?
Yeah.
Well, there's just not the rifle hunting that I grew up doing, like spot and stock kind of rifle hunting, long range shooting. The opportunity that you have with public lands out west is so much greater than public lands in the South.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think the furthest shot that I could get in Tennessee, where I'm from, on public land, like if I had a 400-yard shot, that's a ridiculously long shot. So I don't know. I just felt like there's more opportunity to archery hunt. It just opens up more opportunity in the South.
Okay.
For me, so I get more days in the woods. There's less pressure, especially on public land with a bow. Yeah.
Up until last year, we couldn't even hunt with the rifle in Illinois. So
really,
yeah. It was shotgun only and muzzleloader, but they opened it up to certain caliber cartridges, straight walled cartridges, pretty much.
Now, are they're worried about safety?
Yeah. I mean, there's only public land anyway, and then safety as far as just population density and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, unless you get down south, but other than that, it's a pretty dense population pretty much everywhere you go. We don't need people throwing bullets in every direction.
Yeah.
That's funny you said that thing.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that's funny you say that about the like the density of hunters, because right now is archery season here in Michigan, and I swear to God, I've been running some beaver traps, and there's this road I've been driving down, and to check my traps, and good Lord, there's like a truck like every 100 yards. park down
man.
this 2-track. And I'm like, wow, this is nuts. Like, I can't believe how many people are hunting deer out here.
And it's all archery still?
Yeah. We start November 15th is opener of rifle.
Okay. And how long does that rifle go?
15 days.
15 days. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a decent season.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's nuts, though. I don't like crowded land. I've noticed. Have you guys noticed like a upswing in hunter density as far as like public land goes? Like this year alone, like I've never noticed it before. Normally on a Sunday, you're the only one there. Everybody's watching football or whatever. But this year, it's most people I've ever seen.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's in Tennessee is not terrible. I mean, there's days, opening day, like you're gonna run into
Yeah.
people everywhere, but you can always, I mean, if you put in the work and find those little nuggets, you'll be able to get away from people still around here. But
Yeah.
I prefer to go out on like the coldest, miserable, rainy
Oh
days
yeah.
that there are, and those drizzly days when the bucks are still going to get up and move around, and the hunters aren't. Like those are. I don't want to tell everybody this, but those are
No,
the best days.
I've found it too. It eliminates a lot of the fair weather hunters.
Yeah.
Other than the people that love hunting that leading edge, that cold front, right?
Yeah.
I've noticed that it tends to get pretty crowded then too. You're
Mhm.
definitely not the only one pulling into the parking lot in the morning, but
Yeah.
I've also noticed that a lot of them don't stay past like 9 o'clock in the morning either.
Mhm.
They get to golden hour and then they go, I guess nothing's going to happen. Head home.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes you're just hunting for a hunting spot. So.
Yeah. So you guys said that you guys got out on Tuesday, did a little bit of hunting. Have any success?
Had a nice buck come in. I got a buddy of mine's letting me hunt his 80 acres down here, and his target buck came out, and so I wound up passing that opportunity up. Nice little buck. Brought my kids out with me, just so they could get some time in the tree stand, watch some critters come by. Had a yearling doe come in underneath us, and my son thought it was a little bit too small to take, so I was like, all right, we'll let that one go. And I had one buck with one antler that I would have culled out of the herd for my buddy, just so he's not messing up any other deer. So, but he never came in close enough to get a shot, and it was right at dark, and I climbed down out of the tree stand and tried making a little bit of move on him that evening, and no luck. It got too dark, and I had this tree these branches sticking out right where the only shot that I was going to get at him without running out in the middle of the field, and my arrow would have been in the tree, and I was shooting underneath these branches. Wasn't a good move. So.
Yeah. My buddy was telling me a story. I didn't remember how it all went down, but we were hunting this morning, and he was telling me that the same morning that I shot a buck or a doe on opening morning, he shot one too, or shot at one, and he didn't even notice there was a branch right there in front of him, and he hit it, and it deflected his arrow, and it went straight into the ground right in front of it. And I go, I don't remember you telling me that. And he's like, yeah, no, it happened.
Yeah. And once it happens once or twice, you start looking for branches on them before you pull back. You're like, all right, do I have a clear shot? What's my arrow trajectory? And I had a tree branch save an elk this year on a hunt, and that one still keeps me up at night.
Was that a Western hunt?
Yeah, that was a Washington State hunt.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So you're hunting those Roosevelt elks, huh?
Well, no, he's a Rocky Mountain. The transition line depends on what side of the Cascades they're on, whether they're classified as Rocky Mountain or Rosie. So depending on what side of the trail you shoot them on, they could be different. So
okay,
but
what's the difference?
The difference, size for one. The Roosevelt's got a way bigger body on them, smaller rack. They wind up with this like more of a dark chocolate rack than the Roosevelts or than the Rocky Mountains do. Rocky Mountain generally have larger antlers and smaller bodies.
Makes you wonder what the plains elk actually looked like.
Yeah.
If they were any different, you know.
Yeah.
I guess we'll
Probably
never
tasted
know.
pretty good.
Yeah, I'm sure they tasted pretty good.
I'm
That's
sure
for
they
sure.
tasted great.
Lewis
So-
and Clark sure ate the heck out of those elk.
They
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
But I've actually heard that the Rosies in the continental United States, there's no true genetics left, that somehow it's all been crossbred with Rocky Mountain at some point or another throughout history. I don't know if that's true or not. And I guess like only isolated islands that still have them on it. Like I guess there's one in like Labrador or something like that.
Oh yeah.
And then like, yeah, I think something like that. I can't remember where, but that's like one of the only places like it's a true genetic line of the Rosies.
Huh. That's interesting. Labrador.
Yeah, I think it was Labrador. I don't know.
Yeah.
Somewhere. Yeah.
Hmm.
I could be way off on Labrador, but some island near Canada. So,
Yeah.
but so I was going to ask you about your kids. How old are your kids that you got them out there in the tree stand with you?
Oh, 9 and 12. My daughter's 12, and yeah, my 9-year-old boy. I can get him to go out there and hold still for quite a while.
That's
I've
good.
got a
Yeah.
12-year-old daughter and a 14-year-old son. So my son is into it. My daughter is less into it, but she likes shooting a bow. She's just not I don't know if I could get her to take a shot at an animal. So, but
I know
Cohen-
my middle one I probably could for sure. She's always like, "Dad, bring home some deer steaks. I don't care what it looks like, kill it." And I'm like, I just don't want to. I don't want to kill a little one. No, it's fine, Dad.
We need the meat. Bring it
yeah.
home.
yeah, you can be picky after the freezer's full.
Yeah.
Do you ever take your daughter out with you, Clay? Daughters?
My middle one has expressed interest in possibly shooting a squirrel this year, so
Okay.
maybe we'll do that.
Mhm.
And then Lily, my 5-year-old. I mean, we'll see. She would probably be a hunter,
Nice.
but now that she's living with her mom most of the time, might not have a say in that matter.
True.
But my son, yeah, he's psycho about hunting, but he does not like. I mean, he's just like me. I can't stand sitting there. You know, it's like hell on earth. Like I would rather stalk any day.
Well, I remember, but he couldn't even sit still on the stalk. I remember watching him, and he couldn't help but just bum rush the hogs when we were on that hog hunt.
Man, no, he snuck up on 5 feet away from that one. Remember?
No, but I'm saying like later on there was a whole bunch of them, and he's stalking. They stop. They look at him. He doesn't even stop. He had to get up on them, busting them all out.
Well,
It
he
was
was
fun,
also
though.
he was also 12.
I know.
Yeah.
But it was funny. It was just funny. I know he can't sit still, and we know where he gets it. But so with that being said, let's talk about the company and where did the name come from? Why the Broadhead?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, why don't I? So Broadhead first, right? Like where the actual Broadhead came from. We started with that. We didn't have a name for the company until we had already been down we were already applying for patents and things like that before we actually came up with the name. And that's really Trevor's story to tell on that one.
Mhm.
But the Broadhead itself, right around the time the pandemic hit, we're in Nashville. I'm a songwriter and I'm a musician. And so when everything shut down, my job basically became not a job anymore. And Trevor has a HVAC business, and he was like, "Hey, man, I know you're not doing anything. So why don't you come help me install some, I could use some help, basically." I was like, all right. So we got some truck time, and this guy just, never stops talking about hunting. And I'm very, very curious about everything. Well, we ended up, listening to, there was a podcast on Meteor with about the Ashby report,
Okay.
and he was already down the trail with fixed blade single bevel broadheads because he had a really bad experience with a mechanical out west on an elk.
I was chasing elk out west and with this mechanical broadhead. I won't say the name of it, but I had this bull come in 35 yards from me and just center punched that thing and hit him right in the heart. He wound up running off and dying, but I had no penetration there. And we wound up getting that bull, taking it home, and all the way home, I was thinking like, man, what the heck? Like I'm pulling a 70-pound bow back 35 yards from an elk broadside, hit him perfect, didn't touch a rib on this thing, and had no penetration. So it sent me down a rabbit hole of like, all right, doing all my research on what it takes to get a clean pass through with a bow. And I wound up abandoning mechanical broadheads and just working on shooting fixed blades. And I was fascinated with the single bevel design and the torque that you get out of that if you happen to hit bone, to open up bone to have more penetration. And after listening to that Ashby report with Jake driving around, we kept on talking about, well, all right, what could you do to enhance this design? How could you take that single bevel design and make it even better? And we came up with this helical twist blade design to create more torque and rotation. One, as it's flying. Two, as it's going through bone or anything. It's going to create this twist and torque to open it larger path up for your arrow shaft to go through. So
and on top of that, also just having as you're going through and shooting fixed blade broadheads of any kind, the most common complaint and an issue we would have is like you get to 40 yards and it's hard to group, generally speaking, fixed blades past like at distance. And so, after listening to the Ashby report, he's got his principles of what makes a broadhead lethal. And the two most important things in harvesting any animal are accuracy and penetration. And so that's really what we were after, was making something that you knew was going to go where you're aiming at and that it's going to make two holes, an entry and an exit.
Yeah, that that mechanical head, I mean, even if I had 1 2-inch hole, like I would rather have 2 1-inch holes than 1 2-inch hole any day of the week. Yeah. I want that arrow shaft to go clear through them every single time, no matter what I hit. And that was the genesis of what put us on this path right there.
So we came up with ideas, and I was, we're sitting in the truck, finally landed on something. We're like, man, well, that'd be pretty cool if we could make that. And he's like, well, how the heck can we make that? Because it's a pretty weird shape when you look at it. It's, this contoured blade with straight cutting edges, and like the geometry is kind of complex. And he was like, how could we even like make something like that? And I was like, I bet we could like 3D print one.
Make them out of plastic.
Yeah, and he's like, well,
I'm like, dang, that's a really good idea.
He's like, how much does that cost? I was like, I don't know. But like about 2 days later, he had a 3D printer on his porch from Amazon, and we're teaching ourselves how to do CAD design and designing what we had kind of in our heads, and then just doing a lot of trial and error. We've got a graveyard of broadheads up on the desk up there that's just stuff that we tried, and we're like, all right, needs more twist or like more, like all the different iterations of it, just doing a lot of beta testing, basically.
Yeah, we just kept on refining the design, and I mean, cheap too, just making them out of plastic. We could test one out, go in, change the design real quick and print them back out, and within a couple hours we're shooting our new design there. And we kept
you were actually shooting them. The 3D
shooting them at
target.
Yeah.
Of course, they would break on impact.
Part of the theory, though, was that if we can make them light and have them fly accurately, that once you have weight and and you actually have some force behind them or some momentum with them, and
Get your FOC up there a little
that
bit
you'd
more.
have
better,
even more accuracy. So, which turned out to be true. So we landed on this stuff, and we went through all these things, and finally, start making metal prototypes. And as we're going through the process, we're like, what are we going to name this thing? And so we had some names that we were like, oh, this is going to be great. This is a great name. And then you do like one Google search and find out that what you thought was so original and unique is really not very original and unique. And so we would just kick ideas back and forth about it. And he texted me one night, I just
said Toulou Broadheads.
I was like, dude, that's awesome. What is it? And so
I'm like, before you say no, I'm like, let me tell you the story behind it.
So the story is his to tell, but it's a story of family, tradition, the heritage of hunting, and bad parenting.
So when I was 9 years old, I killed my first deer with a rifle. I was with my grandpa, my dad, and my brother, and we were up at my granddad's ranch, and we threw this little buck in the back of the truck. And you remember your first deer kill, how excited you were, and being out there with all the guys in your family, and getting this experience of your first kill. And we're driving down the road, and my grandpa always had a bottle of peach schnapps, and he pops the top off of it, and it was his tradition there to you pass the bottle around whenever you get a kill. So he takes a swig of it and he passes it to my dad. My dad takes a swig and my brother takes a swig. And the first time at 9 years old, I'm not condoning this by any means, but I got the bottle passed to me.
It was a different time. It was a
different time. Yeah, I don't do this tradition with my kids, but
this is back in the bench seat F-150 days with shoulder to shoulder.
Oh yeah. Four of us all crammed in there. So I'm tipping this bottle back, and my dad hits a pothole, and that bottle sloshes back, and this peach schnapps hits me in the back of the throat, and every bit of it comes out my nose all over the dash of the truck. And my grandpa, my dad, and my brother are all busting up laughing at. And that was right over the top of this creek. And the name of that creek is Toulou Creek. So
and there you have it.
There you have it. Yeah, we want to name it after something that's got the tradition of passing down this family tradition of hunting down to the next generation, and being able to keep on passing that on to the next generation, and your friends and your family.
Which is something that before we even had the name, that was something that was that we felt like was part of the DNA of the company, of like what we were doing, is that this could really be like, obviously the goal is to make the best possible product you can, but really what we wanted to do, or what we've set out to do, is build a community of people that are passing down the heritage of hunting,
and hunting stories
and all the things. And so that story of 3 generations of his family, that have passed down that tradition. And then later on, I benefited from that. And now my son's benefiting from that. And so that really the idea of this is for this to be a catalyst or a vehicle to be able to do that at scale with a lot of people.
Nice. So Clay, are you familiar with Dr. Ed Ashby?
I think I might have heard that episode, possibly.
Okay.
But I did just look up your guys' broadheads, and these are very interesting looking. They're very, very cool. They kind of, honestly, to some degree, remind me of like a metal, like a flint knapped blade, but like metal.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit, yeah. So we have a tagline we use. We say "classic look, modern lethal twist."
Oh,
it's
I see.
it's hard to compete with the thing that Native Americans, were using to, or people in all cultures all over the place were using to harvest large animals for thousands of years.
Mm-hmm.
So the real question was, how can you take that kind of thing, that shape, and innovate it in a way that gives you, the benefits. Like the reason everybody ran away from fixed blades to mechanicals was accuracy issues. So you get accuracy back, but you get to keep the toughness and the resilience of a fixed blade broadhead and get your long range accuracy back.
So what can you explain to me what the accuracy issue is? Like why do you lose accuracy with a normal fixed blade?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
You have that arrow by? I don't know if you still have it or not.
I put it over there.
Well, if you imagine, so this is audio, so I have to describe it with, okay, perfect. So, the reason most fixed blades have trouble grouping is because all of your torque in general, I'm getting away from my mic, but all your torque in general is starting from the back of the arrow. So whether you're shooting a field point or a mechanical or another fixed blade, right? If what normal happens is your arrow comes off of your string, it knuckle balls for about 6 to 12 yards, and then the fletchings pick up and start spinning and stabilizing your arrow, right? So with that, when all your torque is back here on the back of the arrow, the front of your arrow, right, this is where your tight spin is because the moment of force is back here. At the front of your arrow then can walk around a little bit more because it's not what's driving the rotation of the arrow. When the arrow's rotation is being driven from the front, your torque is here because this is where the moment of force is. Then the back just acts like a stabilizer, and it always follows the tip, right? Which is, leans into also that theory of FOC that a lot of people have with heavier arrows and having more weight up front, so that your arrow is less likely to want to be driven more by the back than the front.
Yeah. It'd be like taking a streamer and tying it to a baseball and then throwing that baseball, all your weight's up front. It's literally just pulling that streamer behind it.
Pulling it behind it, exactly. Yeah. So this is basically maybe the easiest way to think about it is it's like an intrinsic form of rifling for your arrow.
Yeah. So most fixed blades are going to wind up, if your bow's not perfectly tuned or if there's any pitch and yaw, you wind up with planing issues, right? You got this big fan out here in front, this big wing that's catching air, and it's going to eventually wind up deviating your arrow off course there. So the more you can rotate it there, we find that it keeps on tracking back because it's always coming back to center, no matter if you hit a branch or anything like that. Like it's spinning so much from the front there that it keeps on coming right back to the center there. So you have less planing issues.
So have you guys actually done like torque tests or anything, or like studies yet, or is that like something in the works in the future?
Well, it's definitely in the future. We do as high frame speed video.
Ballistic gel?
We do ballistic gel and
we made ourselves a little redneck engineering wind tunnel. Have tested like amount of rotation with a high speed camera and things like that, where you're looking at like how much rotation you're going to get. And like the other thing that you do that's interesting is like with our broadhead, you can cut the fletchings off the arrow, put it in a wind tunnel and blow air over it and it spins.
Yeah, I've shot these off a bear shaft arrow out to like 20-30 yards there, and they still hit the target.
Right.
Now I don't recommend that.
I always tune
but we just
my
do
bow.
it to test it.
Yeah, I tune my bow bare fletched, arrows all the way out to 20.
Yeah.
For my final tweaks, and then if those are grouping good, I know once I put fletching on them, they're going to group even better.
Mm-hmm.
And then my broadheads, I don't even have to worry about it. I still test them. I change it up about every year. So far, but it's been fixed broadheads for the longest time. And I've always like toyed with the notion of just trying just to see on a mechanical, but I can't bring myself to do it. I just can't, because I've seen the results, and it's like one devastating, or the same thing you said with the penetration. And it's crazy because a lot of guys don't even read or understand the amount of force needed, or the amount of mass that's needed just to push and get penetration in that. Like most guys are probably needing 70 pound bow with like a 500 and something grain arrow just to make it to where their Grim Reaper or whatever it may be can even pass through.
Right.
Yeah, with the deploying them and all the energy loss
because
there,
they don't
yeah.
even deploy otherwise. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, and everything that moves on that broadhead is stealing energy away from your arrow.
Yep.
So that's part of the reason why our design is one chunk of metal, right? Because it's just any design or anything in physics or engineering, the least amount of parts possible, right? The less things you have in a system, the less things can go wrong.
Yeah, we just had a customer with a 8-year-old son take his first deer with the Toulou Broadhead. I think he was pulling like 23 pounds on a 21-inch draw.
Oh yeah.
And he killed this deer.
Yeah.
8 years old. I was
Yeah,
like,
he
holy
killed.
cow.
Obviously, he didn't pass through. But he said he broke off the back of the shoulder and got a single lung. And he's, obviously blood trail really is dependent upon shot placement. But this particular one, he's like, man, the blood trail was intense.
I find a lot of times with the fixed broadheads that I shoot, maybe it's because I try and double lung them, but like I just don't get that much blood all the time.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I know they're always dead because my arrow is clean pass through them, and you either watch them drop or occasionally they turn a little bit. Have you guys ever noticed that, though? A lot of people, and I don't know if you guys are the same way, but so many times where I've thought I've hit a deer versus where I've actually hit a deer because it's turned or whatever, and I was like, no, it was broadside. I know it was broadside. And all of a sudden it's, quartering away from you a little bit or quartering to you. And the next thing you know, you end up hitting one lung and one liver, one lung and liver versus double lunging them like you thought you were going to do.
Yeah. There's a man, I'm not going to remember the name of it, but there's a guy, he was at the ATA show. I watched some of his videos years ago too. He has a really good shot placement diagrams that he hammers on. Man, I'm going to have to remember his name.
But no, I'm just saying, like, I think it's actually like a mental thing to where your mind fills in gaps and there's a lapse or a pause in time between what you're seeing and what you actually, before you release the arrow, and they've already had movement and you don't realize it because your mind is like visualizing it differently.
Right.
And one of my friends was actually talking about it, and he believes that in high stress situations, our what is it, Clay? It's the parasympathetic takes over. Is that what it is? The parasympathetic takes over, so your brain reacts, and it's in overdrive already, and it automatically reacts to your body, even though you think you're controlling it. It's controlling it for you, and it visualizes or perception. It has a different perception.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like a pre-adrenaline dump. And then you add into that, as soon as that, your release breaks and that, arrow flies, the amount that a whitetail can like duck and roll in the time it takes for that arrow to leave your string to get to them it's a lot. It can be, sometimes they stay perfectly still, but, and also depending on how far you're shooting, they could drop 9 inches and turn 10 degrees by the time your arrow gets to them sometimes.
Yeah. So speaking of that, I'm going to ask you guys and Clay this question. If you're shooting a deer and it's in front of you, say you're in a tree stand or whatever, and its head is down, are you shooting it? And is that better? Is that better?
Is it better?
Yeah.
No, I've watched so many videos of them rolling, but away, even with their head down, and picking up the sound of your arrow. Flying through the air.
Because their front legs are already preloaded with their head down, that they can maneuver in many different directions.
Yeah,
eat more easily and have more momentum and force doing it with their head being down like that. So they can duck it or turn or anything when they hear that movement coming towards them. And I always thought it was better to do that because they were calmer, because
Mm.
you knew they were at ease. But it turns out it's actually a worse shot to take than if their head is actually up and their front legs aren't preloaded like that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well,
I've saw...
if you're like me, I use a gun most of the time, so I don't care.
That works too.
Or a crossbow, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, or a crossbow. Yeah, I'm not. I'm one of those guys. Just
That's all right.
Yeah. Which yeah, you're about to say something. Now.
Oh, I was just gonna say I've been seeing videos and things like that lately too, of people talking about that kind of stuff. And I remember maybe a week or two ago watching somebody, and they were talking about how just that back leg, placement, like they were trying to take a shot. This person I was watching, I forget who it was, but they were like, I want to take a shot while that back leg is kind of halfway, a half step forward in the air is what they were looking for.
Oh, wow.
So like not like it's moving, but it's kind of still, and it's kind of getting ready to, take a little bit of a step, because then they're like, it really can't duck down that much or do anything. Like it's, basically they're thinking of it like how much movement can happen. And to your point, the both legs planted head down, like they can basically go any direction.
Yeah.
I don't know if I get a broadside shot.
If
I'm
I get a
taking
shot,
it,
I'm
so.
taking it. Yeah, most of the time I do. Sometimes
Yeah.
it doesn't work out.
Yeah.
Most of the time it does. And
You'll
even
miss
when
a
I
lot
think
of
it,
opportunities if you don't.
that's right.
Yeah.
Shots on goal.
Aim low. Aim low.
Aim low. That bottom third is important.
Is that always that's pretty common though, eh? Like I've never shot with an actual archery bow. I don't consider a crossbow to be real archery, but I've never shot one with a regular bow. So like them ducking the string is pretty common.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like
Absolutely.
how common?
You see, I mean, I couldn't tell you how many bucks I've had walk underneath my tree stand and with a big old slice of hair off their back, where they just barely, took a little glance and shot off their hair off their back. So, I mean, yeah, I think it's super common. Absolutely. Yeah, deer can hear remarkably well, and they know when something unnatural is coming towards them, and their natural reaction is to just drop and roll away. And that's what they do.
Well, that's like this year I was playing around testing quite a few different broadheads to try and figure out something new that I was going to play with.
Mhm.
And I ended up putting the old Wenzel. Well, I had Wenzel Woodsman ones, the old school 3-to-1 with the 3-blade, and they're hollowed out. And but I ordered some screw-in ones, put those in, and started playing with them. I shot like 2 shots, and it sounds like a freaking Civil War like cannonball that like screams and whistles as it's going. And I was like, there is no way I could shoot this thing. I mean, maybe I don't think the original design was actually for that. It was for like a longbow or a recurve or something that's way slower speed, so it's not spinning as fast rotationally and doesn't have quite that whistle. But it was so bad, I was like, wow, I can't do anything with that. Every single deer is going to duck the string. And it just made me think, like, how much do they normally hear anyway, like, without it having an IndyCar, racing at them?
Yeah. Yeah, I've always tried using as little vane as I could in the rear, and I think our design with the rotation up front helps to reduce the amount of fletching you need in the rear. And sound, we haven't done any sound testing yet, but I have had Jake down near the target when I'm shooting a time or two, and
We've
Good
done
risk it
that.
for the
We've done that. Me and my buddies have done that too.
I'm usually
he's
well
behind a camera somewhere usually.
behind a camera, also backed up to where like there's at least like a shed somewhere to the left of me. Well, I'm like,
How
are
they
you
sound-
ready?
Do they sound good? I've not been down there, so he's the only one that's listened to them. So.
I mean, obviously you can hear an arrow coming. So I don't know. I think it'd be really interesting, and we just haven't done it. I don't have the equipment to do it yet, but
Yeah.
getting like a little decibel meter or something like that and putting it down by the target and then just recording what that thing does when the arrow comes in. And try that with, trying it with several different broadheads and different fletching setups and things like that.
Yeah.
But
I don't know if you guys know this, but you can download a decibel meter for your iPhone.
I've got one.
Yeah.
I've got one. We should. Well, all right. Well, we might try this tomorrow.
There you go. All right, so let's talk about the broadhead a little bit more because kind of curious myself. One of the things is the price point for 3 broadheads.
Yeah.
Is a lot more than a lot of your lower end ones, but pretty comparative to your higher end ones.
Mm.
And maybe not quite as much as a 6-pack, but you're pushing it. What's the reasoning behind all that?
Absolutely. That's a fair question. So when we first started manufacturing or looking for manufacturers, we ran around to all kinds of different manufacturers that do CNC machining, and every single one of them with this kind of geometry all told us the same thing. They said, you will never be able to resell that at any price point that we can produce it for you. And honestly, I got discouraged. I don't know if you did, but I was like, man, we got this idea, we got this vision. I don't know if we're ever going to be able to produce it. So, but I wound up watching this YouTube video of this guy talking about bow technology and how much bow technology's changed over the years, and how much further can we go until we just can't go any further. And he said something that really stuck out to me. He said, well, what if they came up with some kind of string that was made out of this magical, amazing new technology, that this string was like, it was never going to stretch. It was never going to have any damage. It was super light. So it increased your efficiency of your bow. But the only way they could sell it is if they charged like $5,000 for this bow. He's like, would they do it? Would we pay for it? Like, is that the limiting factor in archery technology and bow technology? And it got me thinking. I was like, like there probably are some people out there that would see the value in that product and go do it. And it really changed my mental block, my mental philosophy of going like, all right, well, let's do this, and we're going to stick with our morals and do this here in America, because that was really important to both of us. We want to do this here in the United States. And whatever the cost is, like that's what the cost is going to be. And those who see the value in it will purchase it. And we're not going to worry about it. Let's just keep on rolling forward with it. So we did wind up finding a manufacturer with a price point that we could resell it for.
Yep. And like, with this, as we were going through, we were always looking for ways to continue to add value, because once we reached that point, we knew, okay, we're making a premium product. So in order to sell something as a premium product, we truly wanted it to be a premium product. And so like everything from, the design, obviously, which is innovative, but the coating of the broadhead, the tin that we use, that, they come in a travel tin that, the broadheads nestle into, and then on top of that, like everything being made and sourced in the United States, all those things, we just were thinking, how can we pack as much value into this product, pack as much as value into it as possible, so that when people purchase it, they actually feel like they're getting more than what they paid for.
Mm.
So, what's with the tack to black?
Tack to black is amazing. Tack to black. So the manufacturer, the company that makes tack to black, they're amazing. They're like third generation owned business. They know coating materials like nobody else.
Yeah.
They came up with this proprietary product, tack to black. It's an electroless nickel alloy that it permeates into the substructure of the metal. They have gone through like all the science behind us and geeked out, and it's way over my head. But what it does is it increases the Rockwell hardness of the surface of your material there. So you wind up with like a hard coating shell on the outside of this, but it's not a coating because it molecularly bonds into the metal. So it's part of the metal.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's nickel, so it'll never rust. It's completely anti-corrosive there. So you can spray this with salt water all day long, and the surface of the broadhead will never rust. You might have to resharpen it there to knock off any rust that's on the exposed metal, but down the threads, down the planes of the blades, you'll never have any rust with it. So it's designed to last season after season. You can take it out, get it soaking wet. Don't ever worry about putting any oil on it. It is.
I just oiled mine the other day.
Did you?
Yeah, I had to.
Yeah. If you want to save them, you want to preserve them, you want to keep them.
Yeah.
Keep them
the iron wilds need oil. I'll tell you that they need oil,
Yeah.
or else they ain't gonna make a season without getting a bunch of surface rust all over them.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of the reason we were like, man, if we're going to make these to last, to hold up, for seasons, for multiple seasons, then we need to make them to last, to be able to be as easy to maintain as possible. Because if we don't want to do it, nobody else is going to want to do it. Same thing with sharpening, being super easy. If we don't want to do it, we have to do it more than anybody else. So we don't want to do it, nobody else is going to want to do it. But this coating that's on there, Tactiblack, the thing that's really awesome about it is it actually adds lubricity, is what they call it. But like it's hydrophobic. So not only does it coat the metal and protect it, and it's anti-corrosive, obviously, because it keeps the there's no place for water to go because all the pores are filled in or molecularly bonded with this molecular sealer, basically.
Yeah, hydrophobic. You got to tell them what hydrophobic is.
Hydrophobic is just means something that it repels water. So hydrophobic is like oil and water. They don't mix together. This is the same thing with this coating. And so it actually adds to the penetration of the broadhead because
how smooth it is.
Because of how smooth it is. So it feels like Teflon when you rub your fingers over it.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the Rockwell hardness of of your blades, and is the edge, you said the edge is different than the actual blade itself?
Yeah, so we try to get them in, there's like basically a magic number that's between 55 and 60 Rockwell.
That's hard.
It's hard, but it's, so you want it to be, with metal, it needs to be resilient. So you want it to be hard enough to not roll over or have to have your edge just delaminate. But you don't want it to be so hard that it's brittle, because the harder metal is, like, you can make it super hard. But if it hits something and it's super hard, it'll start to shatter, basically, which is why you'll get broadheads that hit the dirt and then they get all this chatter on the edges and you have to basically file down, resharpen everything. So with these, the goal was, let's try to get it in this sweet spot where, like the whole goal of this broadhead was for it to pass through. So if it's going to hit the dirt, it needs to be able to survive hitting the dirt on the other side. So resilience, was a big factor in choosing the metal, the S7 that we're using, and in choosing how hard we were going to heat treat it to. And then the coating, which is great, actually adds to the edge retention, and it gives us, because it's harder on the outside than it is in the center on the metal part, you maintain a little bit more malleability while still getting that great edge retention on your cutting edge.
So what are you guys doing to sharpen them then? And is it recommended like more or less touch-ups rather than resharpening? Is resharpening hard with it being that hard?
No, I mean, I use sandpaper. We use 1,000 grit sandpaper, and then hit it with the leather stropping wheel there with buffing compound, and you can shave with them when they come out of the box.
Okay. And I mean, is it pretty easy to maintain that edge? I've got some of them that people tell you, oh yeah, it's easy, just maintain the edge. There's a few of them I didn't maintain the edge. I think some of them were actually the ones we used on that hog hunt clay. And they're to the point now to where if I don't actually put them on like a belt grinder or something, I don't know if I can get that edge back without spending a whole day on the landscape.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and I just don't want to even bother with that. Is it offered from you guys resharpening services or anything like that if somebody needs to, or is it?
We don't currently have. Well, it's the two of us, so
Okay.
we don't currently have a resharpening service, but they do maintain like the edges. Like we have a guy we talked to today. He got this season so far a bear, a buck, and a turkey, all with the same broadhead. All of them, the broadhead ended up 3 to 6 inches in the dirt on the other side of the animal, like buried at a 40-degree angle. And he was like, "Yeah, I'm still using the same one." And he's like, "I just now resharpening it after the third critter." So
so he didn't. He just probably touched it up then, or maybe not.
Yeah.
Just touching it up, but.
Yeah, he said it was still extremely sharp after that bear. So he's like,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna keep shooting it. But even though like we got those twisted blades, we got a completely flat cutting surface. So you put it on something flat, and it's touches the entire cutting edge there. So like I'd recommend just 1,000 grit piece of sandpaper.
Yeah.
There, hold that angle, and you just rebuff it back up. The edge retention on the backside holds really good with that Tacta Black. So
Okay.
I don't see any rolling of the metal. We haven't experienced any of that.
Yeah.
Have you shot cinder blocks or concrete walls with it?
Yeah,
we have.
Yeah.
Have you really?
Yeah. Cinder block? Oh yeah.
So we did our own cinder block test. John Lusk did a video with our broadhead, and we knew we were going to be sending it to him, and we were like, well, we better figure out what's going to happen so we're not surprised whenever we send it to him. So we did our own cinder block test, and I think you shot it about 20 yards with your 70-pound Matthews, and it just stuck. We pulled it out, and it was like, we were like, okay, well, you could just sharpen this thing and take it back out in the woods.
Yeah.
So we sent him off to John, and he did his test, and he passed through his cinder block and had about a 3-4 inch chunk roll off about maybe 3 to 4 feet off to the right, and then it spun on center. Had a little bit of tip curl, but otherwise he was like, "Yeah, that's like that'll sharpen right out."
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah,
I knew
that's
some
the
guys
100-grain model.
that tested their broadhead on a tailgate.
Well, we just had a guy on. He did it on YouTube, but he's pretty big on TikTok. Botalk is the name of the TikTok channel. But this guy Scotty in Georgia was testing, accuracy and penetration, and he set up a kind of a little test where he had a scapula in ballistic gel, and then he had a old Blackstone grill lid that came off in a storm, and he's like, well, might as well just throw that thing back there and just for fun, it broke already, so we'll shoot it and see what happens. And our broadhead went through the scapula and through the metal lid of the grill, and just got hung up on the fletchings a little bit on the back end, but it was basically, it passed all the way through. And when he looked at it after, he's like, it's edge was fine, tip was fine, and maybe had a little bit of a scuff from the metal passing through.
That's cool.
Wow.
My biggest fear would be losing them.
Yeah.
Like, I just lost an arrow the other day, and I was like, man, that's got to be like $55, $60 something.
Yeah. Arrows aren't cheap either.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
But so you were telling me before we got on the show that you had a hunting story. Do you want
the
yeah.
the Unabomber story.
No,
yeah,
not the Unabomber. Is that right? Yeah, no, Unabomber. Yeah.
yeah, Ted Kaczynski.
Yeah.
Yeah. My dad, he was hunting in Montana there, and this was before they caught Ted, and he had this buck. He had this buck right across the road. He bailed out and took off after it and wound up shooting this buck. And nice buck, came home, wound up getting it mounted. This is a Montana buck. And like a few weeks later, they caught Ted Kaczynski, and my dad's looking at the news, and he sees this mailbox. He killed that deer right down the road from that mailbox. He could see that mailbox where he gutted that buck out at. There, so that's we call it the Unabomber buck.
Wow.
The Kaczynski buck. Yeah, the Unabomber. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Here he was typing his manifesto in the shed.
Yeah. Here's this gunshot outside of his house.
Yeah, but what's funny is he probably wouldn't even have been dangerous to your dad in any way.
No.
You know,
No.
the only people he was dangerous to was like CEOs and like logging companies and things like that.
Airlines and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, if you read his manifesto, which I've read the whole thing through, it's like some of this sounds pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
Like,
Especially in
it's-
this day and age.
Nowadays, you look at some of those things and you're like, oh man, he's kind of right about technology in a lot of ways.
A
yeah.
little bit of a psychopath. But
Yeah.
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 But he had like he was like a super mega genius though. I think he had like
Yeah.
an IQ of like 170 or something.
Yeah, didn't he? Wasn't he like some CIA? Like
Oh yeah, he got
he worked for the FBI or CIA or something like that, or
no, he got experimented on when he
right.
was younger. Yeah, so
Remember that
that's what
documentary.
they said. They messed him up, man. Like he was really smart and everything, but like I think they messed him up with the acid.
Yeah.
Oh, he was one of the acid trials?
Yep, they
MK
experimented on.
Ultra. Is that that?
I don't know. Maybe
Yeah,
we got to be
not
careful
sure.
what we say here.
they're they're gonna come after your broadheads, man.
Yeah.
No, but the broadheads. What I was gonna ask you guys earlier on, and we kind of got away from it, is is this all in an attempt to have longer distances to be able to shoot? Because like it seems like if you are just within like a 20-yard range, like then that wobble that you were talking about earlier is not really like it's not that big of a deal.
It's not about the distance. It's about the lethality of the
Yeah.
broadhead.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, we wanted to make a more lethal broadhead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make
Okay.
it more
The
lethal.
most lethal we could.
Yeah.
So
Accuracy and penetration. Penetration being, if you're hitting in the right spot, the next most important thing is do you pass the arrow through the animal?
mhm.
And even in his story with that mechanical out west, at 35 yards with a 70-pound bow, you should be passing through an elk with a clean shot like that, right into vitals. And so the fact that he did not pass through is really what started that rabbit trail of going like, well, why did I get no penetration?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it proved to me that kinetic energy, having that momentum to go through something, you lose it with the mechanicals. There, I'm if you have plenty of energy to go through with the mechanical on a little whitetail here or there on the perfect shot, you're not going to go through a shoulder, then you can get away with it. But when you happen to have that not perfect shot, or that deer that you wind up putting through a shoulder, like you need more energy. So
Yeah.
and that's what I've
Yeah.
learned on that elk. So
I've blown through both scapulas with a single bevel with a
Mhm.
heavy arrow. And
Mhm.
there was no way that would ever happen with, a lighter weight arrow. If somebody's shooting, a 380 grain or a 400 and something grain total weight arrow, it's never going to happen. But when you start pushing 518 to 618, like the old arrows I was shooting. 618 grains is a heavy arrow. And if you've got enough force to sling that, it's going to carry that mass with it, the whole way, especially at 25, 35, 40 yards even.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and, Einstein was a pretty smart guy. It's a pretty simple equation, right? Like, you have F equals ma. Force equals mass times acceleration. So if you have mass and you have acceleration, that string is moving, carrying the same amount of energy no matter what, and it's pushing more mass downrange, you're just going to have more momentum by the time you reach the animal than if you're shooting something lighter.
Two mathematicians in one podcast.
Yeah.
So those why grains?
Yeah,
that's a great question.
We don't know.
Yeah, our manufacturers are asking us that all the time because that's our specs.
Yeah, they like grams. We go with grain. I don't know why the industry went that way.
I think it's just because it's hunting and you measure bullets in grains, projectiles, generally speaking, in grains. And a grain is more granular, right? than a gram, right? So one grain is equal to like 1/15 of a gram. So you're just getting more, it's like having more hash marks on your ruler to be able to, tell exactly how much weight you're shooting. And, obviously, I think that probably matters more with a bullet than it does with an arrow. But there can be noticeable at distance, which is why we do testing at distance and things like that. There can be noticeable drop if you have, the difference between a 100-grain broadhead and a 125-grain broadhead, even though that's like less than 2 grams of weight, at distance, you might have 12 inches or 16 inches of drop from that. And so it just gives you a finer unit of measurement to be able to actually judge like what you're matching things up more closely.
Yeah, absolutely. I've even noticed differences between tolerances of manufacturers. I weigh every component of to put on my bow. And one of the things I've noticed is when you get up into the higher end of broadheads, you're normally within, like 3 grains or less, variance between all the broadheads. And some of your other manufacturers, it might be 130 grains, 132 when you're shooting 125. So,
right.
I mean, that could make a big difference.
Yeah. So when we package these, I'm within a half a grain in a package per package. So I'll sort them out thereafter, sharpening them, and make sure that everything
is grain matched.
Okay.
Within a half grain. So
that's good.
Yeah.
That's a good way to have them.
Yeah. With that said, I do a lot of testing, and I'll have 2 arrows at 100 yards that weigh 10 grains different and impact in the same spot. So
there's a certain point where, especially with shooting a compound bow, that inside of 10 grains is almost imperceptible. Like you cannot tell whether it was you holding your tongue wrong or the weight of the arrow,
That's the truth. I think I dive deeper into it just because if I can hyperfixate on tuning and correcting everything I can, there's less variance other than the fact that I'm just an idiot and did something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Taking away variables.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Get rid of as many variables as you can. Mm-hmm.
It really makes me want to change a bread recipe from grams into grains. Just post it online and just see if
during 2020 I was making bread with my kids, and all I had was a grain scale and everything was in grams, and I did a conversion, and I'm sitting there measuring them out and trying to get them all just right.
Yeah.
And you got to be super accurate with bread, right?
Yeah, that's more than super accurate. Plus you probably had to take it and dump it and remeasure to get the rest of your measurement because the scale would max out. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's funny, man.
Well, that's pretty good. I thank you guys for coming on and talking about the product. It sounds really interesting. At some point, I will get my hands on some of those and shoot them. Hopefully, kill some animals. I try and kill animals with everything and see where it happens. So before we go, though, I would appreciate if you guys just told everybody where they could find you guys on social media, where they can find some of your tests and stuff that have been done, and where they can buy them.
Sure. Yeah. So we are probably most active on Instagram. It's at Toulou Broadheads, Toulou. And so, but we're there. We're on TikTok. We're on Instagram and YouTube. And then you can also head to our website where we actually have we're adding to it all the time, but tests and FAQs and questions people ask a lot about the broadheads. So you can go to ToulouBroadheads.com and check them out there too.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and we're getting into more bow shops all the time. So if you have a bow shop and that you like to go in there and tell them, hey, check out these Toulou Broadheads. See if we can get them in here.
Nice.
Tell your friends and your enemies.
We love bow shops, and we partner with them really well. So, and we want to keep doing that more and more. So
okay, awesome. Thank you guys.
I gotta just get good at shooting a bow, and then
yeah.
Otherwise, that would be like a horrible waste of my money because I lose so many arrows. Yeah.
That definitely would be. All right,
they
guys,
make lots of arrows. So.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Luke.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having us on.
And once again, thank you so much for listening to the Publicly Challenged podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show, and if you did, please subscribe on whatever platform it is you're listening to. Also, if you could leave a review, that would help us out. And you can check us out on Instagram or at publiclychallenged.com. And once again, thank you so much for listening to the show.
What's your favorite hunting tradition? Is it going out on the family land? Maybe the woods where you used to build forts when you were a kid, you know? You just get outdoors. And do you go out with your buddies? Maybe that first time hunting with your grandfather. I mean, those are the memories that last a lifetime. Well, hunting season is finally here, and Academy Sports and Outdoor Stores has everything to gear up for the field for less. And when you go to Academy, you get to shop a wide selection of ammo, shotguns, rifles, feeders, game cameras, camo, deer corn, and more from the brands that you trust. I mean, to me, nothing sounds better than all that. I got you guys a good deal. If you text HUNT24 to 22369, you can take $20 off when you spend $100 when you shop hunting supplies at academy.com. Maybe you need a hunting license. Pick it up while you're at the store shopping. Or better yet, get started now at academy.com.